A distinguished morning to our esteemed dignitaries, faculties, and participants. Welcome back to the second day of our national workshop on the ethics of AI in e-governing. We begin our proceedings today with a very special virtual session with a distinguished international expert. Moving to our next session, it is a pleasure to welcome Mr. Shivam, an AI architect at ZS Associates and a member of the Board of Governors at the IEEE Computer Society. With over 7 years of experience, Mr. Shivam has led the development of transformative AI solutions, recognized leadership in the global AI community. He was recently named one of the 20s in 20s by the IEEE Computer Society and received the IEEE Young Professionals Hall of Fame Award. Beyond his industry leadership, he also serves as an adjunct faculty member specializing in responsible and generative AI. Today, he will be sharing his expertise on a very forward looking theme architecting agentic ecosystems. Sir, we are honored to have you with us. I now invite you to share your insights with the gathering.
Slideshow. Yes. Okay, maybe like too early for a lot of them, right? Like especially students getting up early and coming. Maybe we'll do a mental exercise first and then we go. Okay. So simple exercise. I'll just start. Say one. You have to say two. I'll say two. You have to say three. I'll say three. You have to say four. Okay. Ready? One. Ille. Loud. One. Two. One. Loud. Loud. Louder. One. Two. Three. Four. See, this is artificial intelligence, machine learning, right? I didn't say 4, 5. You automatically understood. So brain recognizes pattern, and that's how entire AI also works. So this session is going to be like this. I'm more a storyteller rather than a architect, I will say. So I'll make sure that you learn stories and keep that with yourself, right? Like, so that is very important. Okay. So the theme today, like agentic, I know like a lot of you are creating agents, just agents, but to be honest, it won't work if you don't have an agentic ecosystem. And today I've selected a very beautiful theme of, in India, if you have to really solve like a problem of, like, let's say rural employment or youth employment or developing rural families, some of those, how an ecosystem can come together, what are necessary blocks you need to create to really solve that, right? And I think uh, this conference is also, the workshop is also by the IC. Means they're doing a lot of work on societal related. I was going to the website. I was seeing there a lot of societal related cause which they are working for. So it will also help understand how, if some of you are interested, I know some of your PhD scholars, if some of you are interested in building some of them, I can definitely guide. But the idea should be like, it's not just single agent which is going to create any application for you. It's not happening, right? Like it's going to be an agentic ecosystem for real business value to add. When I say business value, it also means not only business but also real impact where humans can use it. So that is what I'll be touching. But before that, like, how many of you know this concept? This is a beautiful Japanese concept. How many of you know? Anyone? What is it? It's aligning one interests and goal together. Together with whom? Towards. So what makes you fulfill means what society wants. So like for me, ikigai, this ikigai is nothing but technology. I thrive for technology. Like I love technology or AI in general. I can do that. Like I definitely have that expertise to that certain extent. I can get paid for it for sure. I'm getting a lot paid for that, and that is what the world also need today, right? Like so for, and means I'm there in multiple. I think I'm there in startup ecosystem of Government of India with Triple IT Allahabad and Triple IT DM Kanchipuram. I'm there in Board of Governors for IEEE Computer Society. I'm there in Manipal SRM and North Cap University as Professor of Practice, Adjunct Faculty, teaching responsible AI, agentic AI. Like, and there in ZS, which is my day job, where like I lead a like around 80-member team. I lead a technology innovation lab, which is like a lab, really lab within a consulting firm. So you can imagine the kind of work we are doing there. So that's the background. But all of this is connected through one single thing, that is my passion for technology and my passion for AI. So I think one important thing I'll want you guys to also identify is what is your ikigai. Make sure you think about it, because if you have an ikigai, trust me, Japanese say that if you have ikigai, you extend your life, you enjoy your life. So that's, and I have started seeing that it's happening. So okay, without further ado, why I am here for? Like I said, I'll narrate a love story. How many of you think this is a love story, by the way? If someone of you have attended my class previously, you would have understood why it's a love story. But anyone who thinks why it's a love story, how many of you agree with this? Artificial intelligence and common sense is a love story. May or may not be. Anyone who definitely feel it's a love story? Anyone who doesn't feel it's a love story? Raise a hand. It's fine. All doesn't have to become like Chaturramalingam, right? Ranchors. So, yes. What's your opinion? Like, what do you think? Is it a love story or not? Don't go hand in hand. Who corrects that mistake? Or only after you provide a common sense to them, right? Like, like two mathematical for like equations, I will say, right? If you have seen graph of sine theta and cos theta, have you ever seen sine theta and cos theta graph together? Like, they are complementary. Like sine 90 minus theta is equal to cos theta, and cos 90 minus theta is equal to sine theta. But they add up when squared to 1, right? Like sine square theta plus cos square theta is equal to 1. Though they are complementary, yet they complete each other. That's a love story, right? Like me and my wife, we generally like a very different personality. But when I go down, I think she lifts me up. So definitely that's like a kind of relationship which we say love story. And generally artificial intelligence and common sense also holds similar kind of relationship, I will say. Like, they complete each other in one sense, and that's why like I name it as a love story. Means, and you'll see like in my session I'll cover that part of also, like why I am saying so, right? How many of you know FIFO LIFO? What is FIFO? What is LIFO? There's something called gigo. You know what is it? Learn this term, it's important. Garbage in, garbage out. F of garbage is equal to garbage. No matter what, anything you give, be it AI, be it quantum, any technology you bring, if beneath it's going garbage, you'll get garbage. So that's one of the important terminology apart from FIFO and LIFO, which you should definitely be aware of. Now, why do you think NLP is so tough? Anyone who feels NLP is easy, by the way, first? Natural language processing, all of this agents, AI today is built on this particular concept of natural language processing. So why do you think NLP is tough or easy? First of all, is it tough or easy? What? Maybe tough, easy.
So it's kind of easy. Like we when a child born, like we teach him by the word. This is something we call. This is something we know. Like that similar way in a computer system also. In NLP, we try to teach by the word like
So
separation.
it's easy.
Kind of.
Okay. How anyone who thinks NLP is tough, why this is itself a huge research field, and a lot of problems have not been solved in natural language processing, by the way. Even within LLMs, it has its own cons, and I'm going to talk about that, where LLM fails. But okay, let me show you some examples. If you just read the first sentence, people might think very differently as soon as you read the full paragraph. What will be, if you have to complete the sentence, what will be the next two words? Huh? Anyone? What can be the next word? Be like ChatGPT, predict the next token. Anyone? Particularly when the case involves a okay. Ma'am says some kind of disease. What? Involves a gender specific. Anything else? If you read, maintains accurate patient information and ensures appropriate clinical protocols are followed, particularly when the case involves a childbirth. See, there can be multiple options which can come. Now it depends on what context it was there set for, right? That's why natural language processing words cannot be interpreted without a context. It actually depends on which. So there can be, actually this particular fill in the blanks have more than 100 of options which you can keep filling. Now that which one to select out of 100 depends on the context. It is not a word which decides. So, and currently one of the fundamental flaws in all of these large language models is it's a word prediction model. Context is missing. So context comes from where? Common sense. Now there's a way to how to put context into large language models. I'll come to that. But that is one learning. Okay. Let me show you a video.
What do you think the chances are of a guy like you and a girl like me ending up together?
Well, Lloyd, that's difficult to say, and we really don't.
Hit me with it. Just give it to me straight. I came a long way just to see you married. Just least you can do is level with me. What are my chances?
Not good.
You mean not good, like 1 out of 100?
I'd say more like 1 out of a million.
So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah!
What is this? Humans. This is called, like, I don't know how many of you know, but this is called cognitive bias. Humans have thousands of such biases. This is just confirmation bias. Like, I did an experiment in Delhi, like very good experiment. So what I did, I was there for a week for something like some conference. So like 3 days, I actually folded my sleeves. So there was a place where always drunk and drive test was there, and my friend had a car. So what we did is like, so first 3 days I folded my sleeve, loud music, and opened the window, and so every time in the drunk and drive test, I was caught. Like I didn't drink, but they stopped me and checked. Next 3 days, I actually didn't, like a sober person. I was just going. They never caught me. So there's a confirmation bias. Every occupation, every profession, every domain has this bias. Now 90% of time it's called intuition. Like, so if you read, there's a very good book by Dale Carnegie, like Thinking Fast and Slow, which talks about system 1 thinking and system 2 thinking. Human operates on both of these thinking. It's not just system two, like, so currently LLM with RAG and all of these, they do have system two thinking where you would get some knowledge, answer a question. But system one thinking is very difficult. It comes with experience. So biases are not always bad. Biases are good in sometimes because it helps you take decision faster. So, but there are negative aspects of bias also, which I'll come. But LLM doesn't have system one thinking, is what I'm going like telling. As of today, LLM lacks system one thinking. Clear? Let me show another video.
Hello. Oh, I'm sorry. We're only boarding rows 9 and above right now. You'll have to wait.
I'm in row 8.
Please step aside, sir.
It's just one row. Don't you think it's okay?
We'll call your row momentarily. Step aside, sir. Thank you for waiting. We'd like to continue boarding the aircraft now. We're now boarding all rows, please. All remaining rows. Hello. Enjoy your flight. Enjoy your flight.
So this is what happens when you actually ask a robot for doing some of these tasks, right? So what is lost here, the user experience. See, there are decisions which in India, no one will know better than India. We are a country where like everything is chaotic yet beautiful. Beauty in chaos is what, like when I like said, a lot of IEEE board of governors, like I'm the only Indian, I think, like who is from India in board of governors. There are others outside India, mostly from US and Europe. So when I bring them in India, the one thing they say is like, man, like how does this country run? So I said, this is Rama run country. Like this is God runs country. This is Jesus run country. So this is not run by just people. It's run by spirituality. It's run by a lot of other things, right? It's so chaotic. If you see someone is coming from, yet we are all like, when you see from whole, like the way we are growing is tremendous. So there are things we do out of the box. There are things we do, like we adjust ourselves. Like even within a family, you do have to do that, right? So humans by nature adjust. It's not that only India adjusts. There are a lot of people, lot of places, everywhere where human is there, there is adjustment. In this case, because you asked the robot to check in, like she went with rules. Okay, I will not board till this time, though everything is empty. So user experience, and this is called process knowledge. Agents will never work till the time you are able to embed process knowledge for real applications. And trust me, codifying process knowledge is a Herculean task. Can it be done? Yes, there is a way out, but it's someone has to work hard for that. It's not just vibe coding is going to help you. Means it's science. At last, it's science and engineering. It's not just like, okay, you'll think and it'll come. At last, it's hard work. Clear? Now, I showed you two use cases which were very like, I think it's not like more like a motivation, but I'll show you a real one now. So this is one of the problems. So just to give some context, pharma we have to produce a lot of documents, FDA documents, like protocols, CS, clinical study reports, before you actually get a drug approved. So these documents, the data exists somewhere in tables, somewhere in other documents. You just need to collate and create a final document. Now that time is very high, like, and because of that, like it takes maybe 3 months, 4 months just to collate such a document. Now, if you already have the data in systems, can you not have an agent collate that data, right? So were trying to create something like that for a couple of our clients, right? Like, and while we were creating such a content, so that we had two agents. One was creating the content, another we also need some of the critique, right? Because there are some FDA guidelines which we have to follow while creating the content. You cannot just create a random content and send. You need to do some validation and all of those kind of things. So there was a critique agent, there was a creation agent. You won't imagine both of them started fighting with each other. They went into a deadlock state because their persona was again very different persona. They were complementary persona, right? One was creating. It's like two sibling fighting, right? That like, and then like it was a, when I saw that logs coming, it was really that, and they ran till hours and hours. They were just, they were not able to reach to a consensus because they're in one of the problem with single agent systems is that it has personal goals. It doesn't think like an organization. If you see, like every agent has their own objective function. You are a SQL developer, or you are a content creator, you are a content critic. But did how will both of them come together to a consensus? Who is guiding them? Who is controlling them? You want to create autonomous agent, but and just imagine this kind of deadlock can happen in many scenarios, and it is very scary. It can go out of control when you don't know what is going on. It can become black box for you. So it's very important to, when we saw this problem, we said that there is something which needs to, and we created a research, like we did a whole research. Now the paper is also accepted in Japan, where we'll be presenting it. But there are a lot of such real world conflicts which happens, right? So I gave you an example of creation and critique, but there can be like speed versus cost is always a thing, right? If you want to build with more speed or with more like cost, right? Like it's a trade-off which you always see, right? How to optimize that. If you see, like again, means these are all pharma examples, so you'll also find sample allocator and detailing strategies, right? One will just select the sample, another will detail. Again, this is a trade-off in pharma. So there have been such scenarios where these kind of trade-offs are there. So you need a parent, similar to when your siblings fight, right? What happens? There is a parental guideline which comes into place everywhere. Like even in organizations, there's a vision, mission, and there's some core values every organization has, right? In school, first thing we used to learn, like when we were in school, is like vision of mission, what we want to do. So what is that vision and mission? That this is something everyone has to abide by, and then you can decide what to do as an individual, but at last you need to abide by this. So whenever something falls flat, we go to our parent, we check who is right here. Then maybe like majority of times like boys get hit by mothers, but like at last, like the parent comes and tries to console, right? Like, okay, no, you should do this, you should do this, and then they. So similarly, agent also needs a parental guardrail where the parents have the final power, and the defining that parents is still should be with human. No matter how much autonomous you become, don't leave the parental guardrails. And this is one real world problem which I'm telling you, right? So there have been lot. So there are, this is the way, like these agents, there are multiple agents which were designed for this use case, and then there was a parent which we brought, but that parent was heavily controlled by human. And we saw like what accuracy improvements, time optimization, everything which was required for the use case, right? So so now coming back to this topic, right, where we talk about, like, so I started with like how to build an agentic ecosystem. So there are problems with agent. Everyone agrees now. Everyone agrees that there are issues. But can you solve it? Yes, you can solve it, right? Like how to solve it is, so this slide talks about, suppose like what are the major issues currently in like which government like is facing, right? One is youth employment, right? There is a huge shift that where we need youths to be employed, but we don't have that opportunity, right? Or maybe we have that opportunity, but we are not able to connect the dots. Then what are other things? Rural family development. We want the, like in rural India, right? We want, what you say, the way of living should go up. The way we are, like in it, that's why they migrate, right? People migrate from villages to cities. Why? Standard of living. But if you are able to make rural India itself high in terms of standard of living, why will people migrate? No one is going to migrate. So that is another problem I feel that we should solve. Women empowerment and livelihood assistance. Like we definitely need women empowerment. Community health education program, right? And finally, like for all of you, student wellness and scholarship assistant. I know a lot of you feel, right, like why are we given scholarships or some based on certain, like there's huge debate going on currently in like Supreme Court also, right, where like I think previously the way the reservations were made and now the reservation, so there's like a lot of discussions going on, right, but we can go above that and solve this problem in a different way rather than just so how to solve all of this problem, right? Like why? So I'm just talking about the applications which it has, right? These are applications which an ideal government will need for having good governance, right? Like these are the kind of applications we need to build. What you need to build for that? You need different agentic ecosystems. Like if you see first educational intelligence from your college, you have attendance tracking systems. You know, like when are you submitting fees, what is happening, when did you got, what courses you are enrolled in, what is your interest area, what is your strength. Every information is there with the institute. The data is there. It's not that the data is not there, it's there. So educational intelligence can be brought in. Same healthcare intelligence. Currently, lot of any hospital you are going, they're having like a portal where you have to log in first, and then the like scans happen and everything gets uploaded. Even for like veterinaries, they are doing this, right? Like even for my dog, I have everything on an e-portal. So everything is digitized now. Like everything is digitally available now, right? So the data is there even for healthcare to some extent. Finance. Your PAN card is linked to your Aadhaar card, right? So your PAN, that's one of the way to collect all your finance information, right? Like how, like what is your credit score, what are other things, like all of, like generally how much means in your PAN card, all that information is there. Now just imagine for student scholarship, if I can understand that, okay, this student doesn't have a good financial backing, he's going through, or he's going through some health condition, but he wants to study. I've seen a very powerful like scorecard, which then we should award him some kind of a support proactively rather than reactively, right? The government should go to that student and say that, hey, you are the future, we'll support you here. And this is the kind of application which doesn't require one agent. Again, this requires all of this to be connected together. But currently, all the startup founders also, or everywhere I've seen, they're just building one minute, each solution. They're not thinking about an ecosystem. But who can think of an ecosystem? Like, means generally, there was a like conversation I was having from someone from Birla family. So last year, we got an award from Paj Jindal for one of the startups we had. So I was having that conversation, and in that conversation, they're trying to create something horizontal for all the business units of Birlas, like your uh, finance, your like fashion, your cement, that industry, all of this through one single AI and tech platform. So they're thinking in that direction, and they were searching for some roles. So that is where I think that kind of a vision needs to be brought. So only big folks or the government can think about it. If you see, the real person who can think about such an ecosystem is the government. But they will need developers, they will need people, they will need students who can work on this initiative, right? So that's where like you need to have all of this is coming, but you need to connect, and there needs to be some, again, guidelines which needs to connect all of this, right? And the last layer, so I think I said that data is available, but where is the data available? In some database, in some documents, in some PDF file. But is that data ready for AI to consume? No, because AI requires specific information. You give generic information, garbage in, garbage out. So really, what the data is available, but data is useless. How to make the data useful? So there are ways. Unstructured data needs to be processed in a certain way. Structured data, we need to add metadata over structured data. What is metadata? Data about data. Like if I say that, okay, Dr. Divya is a great lady working as a professor in SRM, right? What I get is like my sentiment is very positive about Dr. Divya. That's a metadata. So data over data is what needs to be captured. And when someone talks about like, can you give me some good feedback about Dr. Divya? It will pull right information from right places where the sentiment has been positive. 70% of your work goes into this data and knowledge concept. Again, data should not be seen without knowledge. I was talking about process knowledge, right? So I'll come to that concept, but make sure you understand that it's not the agent or the AI which you are building is going to help. It's about 70% of your effort has to go into this knowledge layer. And at last is what you say LLM infra, that is your OpenAI API or any APIs. That you have readily available. If even India has their own models now, right? So you can use any of these APIs, but over that you have to build a lot to get to a business value. Clear? Any questions? Too much? Okay, I'll just cover the knowledge layer then. What is knowledge layer? So how many of you think knowledge is just data? Do you think knowledge is just data? What is knowledge? Driving a bike, is it a knowledge or not? Skill. Skill is the concept. It's a skill, but it needs to be there, right? Does LLM have skill? So LLM is facing a disease called antegrade anemia. It's actually a disease state. What is Gajini, have you seen? What happened after the incident? He doesn't recollect. So LLM, after it is trained, it doesn't recollect. You need to give context. So how can you make LLMs better is like training them again and again and again, but that's a very compute intensive job. So what is other way of knowledge then? Anyone else from this slide? Think about it. Skill, I agree. Thanks, ma'am. Anything else? What is domain according to you? What is a domain? Is love a domain or not? Love is a domain. If you have gone through breakups, you will understand what does it take to go through breakups, right? Like next time you are not going to do that mistake. Or maybe some of you will still, but at least you have that knowledge that, okay, what happens when you are going through a, like let's say a relationship. So domain can be anything where it's very specific, right? There are things which you do, right? Like let's say healthcare, if you say is a domain, education is a domain. Within education also, university education is a domain, like your school education is a domain. Your domain can be like, it's a, you have a broad, but you can keep going down. It is subdomains. And so capturing that domain knowledge is very important. Now, huge knowledge, right? How do you capture? So there are ways to capture that domain knowledge, and there's a technology where very few people use that technology. I'll talk about that, but that's one thing which you need to. So knowledge is not just data. Knowledge also encompasses domain. Then is data. And then also, when you talk to ChatGPT, you actually directly or indirectly give your preferences. In follow-ups, hey, I want a chart for this question. Can you create a image out of it? So the ChatGPT, if it really had memory, it will start understanding. And next time, before asking you, you will have a diagram created for a question which is similar in nature. So memory is also knowledge. There is a memory component which is a part of your knowledge. And then finally, you have user thoughts and like agent thoughts, where agent is actually taking a decision. You need to capture that. On what basis did the agent take a decision? How do you do that? So you need to codify the data knowledge. You need to codify the human expertise, the domain knowledge. You need to codify the cognitive knowledge. All these three knowledge needs to be codified. How do you do codify all of this? So there are various frameworks which you need to build to codify these knowledge. Like metadata lake, creation of a metadata lake. Metadata lake kind of a concept didn't exist 1 year back. So for developers who knows computer science background, metadata lake is nothing but an API between the actual application and your backend. You know what is an API layer, right? So okay, if you're from computer science background, you would have understood. But API is nothing but your application is there. You have a front end application, right? Web development. You design some middleware which can connect back to your data. So that API for agent is nothing but metadata. That middleware is the metadata. It connects the agent to the data. Simple example, text to SQL. Everyone of you write a SQL query based on this particular question. How many like movie stars have been there in this kind of genre? I'm just asking this simple question, right? Unless it knows that okay, how many table exist, what is the definition of each table, what is the column description, how two tables can be joined, agent won't be able to answer this accurately. So for structured data also, that metadata is important, which includes table description, column description, and all of those things. Clear? Sure. I know you guys were forced fit, but just make sure that you understand and take something out of it. Clear? Okay. Same digitization, every unstructured data needs to go in a, you need to process that. See, structured data, databases have been created and it has been a huge, like long concept, right? It has been done from last so many years. But unstructured data has been new. Processing of unstructured data as a concept itself is very new, like 3 years, 4 years. There is a way to process it. You cannot just randomly chunk, because again, I said, remember my example, sex is important. If I just don't say anything, people will interpret it in 10 different ways. So how you chunk your unstructured data, how each of this gets stored is very important. That requires some science. Clear? So that is what is unstructured data. And then how to capture human expertise. How many of you know knowledge graph? Anyone of you know knowledge graph? See, and this is a sad part of our education system. Everyone spoke about RDBMS. How many of you know SQL database? Raise of hand. SQL database, RDBMS, relational databases. 3, 4, 5. No one knows knowledge graph as a database. This was a European technology which was there in from 1980s, where people spoke about natural language. You can store subject, object, predicate. If I have to store, like let's say again taking Dr. Divya as an example, Dr. Divya teaches in SRM. I want my subject is Dr. Divya, my object is SRM, and predicate is teaches in. So that conveys information about Dr. Divya, right? Dr. Divya teaches in SRM. Dr. Divya lives in Chennai. I can collate information about an individual or an entity through this graph structure. So NLP and knowledge graph goes hand in hand. If you really want to store natural language, especially unstructured data, knowledge graph plays a very, very important role. Even human expertise needs to be stored in something called ontology, which then gets converted to knowledge graph. Ontology is nothing but where you can codify your human expertise. Say ontology itself is a 2-hour session. It's a very huge, broad topic, but just remember this word ontology and go back and Google about it. From here, at least one thing you should say is it's not only a SQL database or other database, no SQL database. There is something called knowledge graph, which is also a database. And there is something called ontology where you can start storing human rules, human driven rules. Yes. Yes. If A, then B. If B, then C. Then if A, then C. This kind of predicate logic, right? Exactly. So this, and if you see, that's the part which LLM lacks, right? They don't know inferencing like pretty well. Humans take decision this way only, right? If I saw this, then maybe this will happen, and if that happens, then this will happen, right? Like you connect the dots pretty well, and that's how you need to store that information somewhere, because that connection of dot is still there in your head. Clear? Any question? Expert system. Correct. Correct. Expert systems have been built on this philosophy itself. Initially, if you see GoFi, good old fashioned AI, that's what is GoFi. This, before everything came, expert systems was what they're existing. What was expert system? It was having exactly what ma'am is saying, right? Like it had that kind of input and output, and there was a inference logics which were existing. That inference logic previously was codified in some language, C Lisp kind of languages exist where all of these rules were codified. But that time itself, that is the reason where, like, if you read why knowledge graph came, was because of that reason. Because they wanted to, for expert system, they wanted to have a database which can help there. But in 1980s, not many used except for Europeans. Now every other pharma clients have a graph database. That's one of the skill set which we want in industry, and it's a very high paying job. Like ontologists and graph engineers are paid very, very high. Even AWS, Google, everyone hires them. But they're very, because they're very less people who actually are there in that particular domain. Clear? How much time I have, ma'am? Okay. So I'll just show one demo and then maybe we'll wrap up. So how does this help, right? So the idea is you need to have a unified knowledge layer. Like I said, right? See, siloed you can do, but actual insights will only come when you have unified knowledge layer, right? How does it help? This is a good example to show, right? You have three different, like let's say agents or assistants which for you: brand assistant, virtual patient assistant, and analytics assistant, right? And there is a unified knowledge layer and a unified agentic layer. So when I'm asking a question, so this is a question I asked, right? Like, for a drug, how can I accelerate early adoption? This is a very pharma specific question, but when I ask this question, it calls one agent and then it calls some part of the knowledge. It gets some information from certain aspects of the, so we call it knowledge nuggets, right? Instead of putting the entire context, you're just getting the right nuggets, which is important. Okay, you can ask follow-up question again, different part of knowledge nuggets will be activated and you'll get that information. In second application, if you will see, like when we'll go to the second application, again same like knowledge layer will be hit, but different knowledge nuggets and getting that information. So in second, I'm asking a question about like who are the HCPs where we are over investing, which doctors are we over investing on, right? This is the kind of question if we are asking. It goes again to a centralized agentic ecosystem and picks some other knowledge nuggets, right? Then there is a third application where you will see like again it will be a mix of first and two and it will get the information. So because your data, your knowledge is unified, it's able to pick that up. Okay, so that's one other learning which you should have is like never have data in silos. You need to unify the data and make sure that your data is being consumed by multiple agents, and that's how knowledge layer as a concept is very important. Okay, so there were other slides on how to have empathy for agents. There are research papers which we like. So this is something which we did with Manipal. Just quickly 2 minutes on this. So one of the reason, if you see, of low adoption of all of these technologies have been we don't have, like, generally I want an LLM model or an agent to understand me, right? If I'm asking a question, this is what I mean, because intent is very user specific. Intent is something which depends on user to user or persona to persona, right? So for that, it's very important. So we did a, like with the Department of Management in Manipal, we actually did a psychological analysis and collected 25 like interviews. We did 25 interviews with 25 students and created individual chatbots with them. And we saw that for a certain question, was the chatbot having similar emotions what the human had? And the results were amazing. It did, to some extent. So there was one lady, like girl, basically. She used to say that whenever she was happy, she used to take a reference of my father used to say this, my mother used to say this, and then respond. The chatbot also responded. My brother used to say this. So means it's just about making them more adaptable, right? Like it becomes like you start feeling for that chatbot also. So that kind of a like will increase adoption. So there is ways to insert empathy, and one of the important ways of doing it is memory. So I'm not going to touch deep in it, but there are ways where you can have the different kind of memories. Like ma'am talked about skill. Skill is nothing but procedural memory that comes from cerebellum. So in your brain, I'll just talk about two main important parts of your brain: cerebrum and cerebellum. Cerebrum is your RAG system, where you have some semantics stored and you fetch some information. Cerebellum is where you learn skills and it becomes involuntary. So if you see, that's how your procedural memory gets stored. Now, procedural memory is like riding a bike, driving a bike. You don't think when someone comes that should I put a brake or not. You'll automatically your hand goes onto the brake. So that kind of a memory is also required in agents. Currently, it's in development phase. No one has cracked it fully. It's still a very open research area where people are focusing. Even my lab is focusing on that, like on how to have these memory concepts integrated within the agents. But okay, so I think we don't have time, but yep. So success breeds complacency, complacency breeds failure, only the paranoid survive. This is a very good quote which you should definitely remember. Never get too much elevated by your success, always be grounded. So humility is what brings you more success. Okay, thanks.
In the project, we are like working on the study, and after the questionnaire, we will be doing a dashboard for the responsible AI part, and then we'll be moving on to uh, for the recommendation of policy briefs. So, where does this observability layer comes in?
Very good question, and thanks for reminding. So this particular layer, it's a horizontal action, like it's a vertical which expands across all the layers. So if you really want, so responsible AI is not just limited to your agents. Even the way you create the data involves some aspects of responsible AI. So it's very important. Your observability, actually, which we call agent ops or AI ops or ML ops, right? Like that comes into the like responsible AI, which is more vertical in nature, and it can be integrated. So if I talk about a very simple philosophy, right? Like while processing the data, if you want to, like in a protocol document, I'm just taking a very technical example. There is something called like efficacy and safety kind of things, right? Where it's written that, and then in protocol you also say that how much drug should be injected during which part of your like which week. So suppose while extracting the data, you're using LLM to extract the data. By chance, it changes 10 gram to 10 milligram or 10 milligram to 10 gram. For LLM, it's just M which goes off, but it's very dangerous. So even while extracting the information, is that information accurate? What was there in your document? You need to measure that. So that kind of observability needs to be plugged in even at a data extraction level. It's a very complicated problem for multilingual. Tamil itself, you see, I've seen that in Japanese and Chinese. So what has happened is Japanese has a lot of homophones. The way we pronunciate and what they understand like is very different. The same pronunciation can mean two different things. So in multilingual specifically, so all your OpenAI model or Claude model or all of these models are trained on something called, initially it started with OpenCrawl or some name is there. Open source data, which was there, 86% of data is English. It's only 14% data which is blend to other languages. So you can imagine the bias it has towards English. So That's why which LLM infra layer, which LLM to choose will be important for multilingual. So ideally, you should train your like, or I know there will be folks training it can be, and it should be ideally. That's why all the like in India we have so many languages, but like in Japan and China they are training their own model on Japanese and Chinese, right? In India also we should do for some of the prominent language like Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Hindi. Like we know these are some of the languages where we have a lot of Bengali, so we have to take, because the population speaking Bengali is quite huge. Means you won't imagine, it's in billions. I've seen that like numbers. So you need to have those biases like eliminated if you want to go towards multilingual.
Thank you, sir. And apart from this, we need your advisory when we are developing the dashboard.
Sure, sure.
Thank you, sir.
Any more questions?
Any other questions?
When you were talking about multilingualism, and means we do have projects on bhasha and things like that, and because the bias, because the training of the agents is in English, it's very white, it's very male, and so one needs to diversify that, right? Because diversity is going to at least minimize the biases, right? So my question is that when we are talking about this diversification, with the kind of the funding that comes to teaching our students, right? So we still teach them very very old old syllabi, and it's not always on the faculty because the faculty wants to update. I'm not saying all faculty is just going to teach from some notes, but the government is not actually really paying for that. And in that sense, then our knowledge system is very very rich, but it's not actually reaching there. So the biases will keep on continuing to do so. And so if you have anything, means of course I know, it's like, as an individual, whenever people ask me, it's very difficult for me to answer because we cannot do that. Goes back to policy. So what are your ideas on that?
So I think 2-3 ways, right? Like, so one, I think SRM itself is following. So they have a responsible AI course where they have like a like industry person, like, and then there's a faculty. So that kind of investment. But again, for SRM, it might be easy. It's like private, like for government institutions, if you ask. So IEEE or some of these organizations actually provide you funding opportunities for some specific problems like this. Diversity and include means I am there in the IEEE Computer Society BOG, Board of Governors. I know there is a diversity and inclusion fund of up to $50,000, which is being given for such programs. So maybe you like there are grant opportunities that's like from some of these non-profit where around the globe, right? Then there are some collaboration opportunities. See, funding, like definitely government should actually add to the funding. I'm 100% with it, and I think at least recent times I've started seeing some coming, like because I'm the way they are spending on startups and other things, like it's coming to the university and the university is distributing that fund. That's how it is happening. Maybe direct funding opportunities to the organization just on certain topics, I think that is also starting to happen. Like if I like they have set up some semiconductor specific labs, government is sending, but that still the funding is less. So to like bring that collaboration with external universities and external partners becomes very important, and that collaboration will happen through some platforms like IEEE, because IEEE has that network, or ACM has that network where you have people across. So maybe government plus IEEE combination is what is the answer, but that's again based on my limited knowledge and how the government is functioning. But yes.
Sir, in an agentic ecosystem, it's about like it's work like on the basis of organization, like multiple there will be like multiple agents works on the basis of their tasks. So like indirectly or directly, the brain of this agentic is just the LLM. Like whatever the text we give, it directly
The brain is still human.
no.
Codified domain knowledge. See, LLMs can interpret data for a given context. Where does that context come from? Domain. So if you see in the knowledge layer, I told you, right, there is an aspect of domain which needs to be codified. This domain, who has this domain is actually experts in that, SMEs, subject matter expert for that particular field. So even in government, if you see, like there is a full finance like part of it, right? Who will have very in-depth finance information on where the spend is going, how the spend is going, how that is working. I cannot tell that. That person can tell. So if you really want to redirect some of the funds to some scholarship programs, it's the right SMEs are going to be. But how to take that decision, LLM will not know.
No, I'm saying like we give a tax, but the agent works on the particular tax, like whatever we give. So like directly the when we give the tax to like in our platform, like a user textbook, when you like we just give a tax like do research on this particular field. So there will be multiple agents, right? Multiple agent they do on their own tax, but after the giving the power like to searching, so somehow like the connection is linked to the LLM, right? So my question was like, what's about the privacy? Like, on which part the privacy come? Like,
So LLM is not a brain. I think that was the first thing I wanted to.
Okay.
LLM is not the brain.
Okay.
Brain is also your knowledge layer.
okay,
LLM along with knowledge layer forms your brain. So the privacy part, I think that's a definite thing, right? Like that's why, like how much data you are putting, how much you are excited, what you are putting to your online platform, how much you are exposed to social media. So I don't know if have you ever tried, but when you install an app, there are permissions it takes. And because of lack of time or because of lack of like you just click all, but there is one small place where it is written that we will be using this data for training. In OpenAI there is a way to disable that. If you go, there is a way in the portal OpenAI has where you can disable, you should not use my data for training.
Yeah.
But no one uses that, right? Like no one is going to do that, like no one knows about it. So generally they don't publicize, but legally they are still having those in options.
like in agentic form, like if there is any way like we can like we can set up a like a structure.
Guardrails. So you just have a, so that's where guardrails comes into picture, right? Like, so this part, first part which you have. So guardrail is telling that any sensitive, we write those. So there's some multiple different kind of guardrails like PII. Don't accept PII information. You can actually put a guardrail. You can have your own guardrail whenever you're using an agentic system. You can put those guardrails in that agent and tell that these things needs to be followed. So PII is nothing but personal identified information. So till the time they don't know you are a person, they are not able to connect you. That's the most important information you should not reveal. That's why it's very important that whenever you are using agentic systems, make sure that you don't tell your name. Create a story, get some random, don't upload your Aadhaar card, don't upload your PAN card, don't upload your passport in all of these systems. Because till the time PII information is not there, they won't be able to track you. The time you give up PII information, then all the analytics begins. Okay. Any more questions?
Sir, one more I can ask.
You ask.
So like
Till the time Dr. Divya is not kicking me out. So.
okay then.
Yep.
Like in agentic form, there is multiple like millions of agents forming right now. Like in minutes, like multiple agents are forming. So like when you give out like thinking capacity, like any kinds of capability thinking, like yeah, as you heard about the latest news, like multiple agents they are creating their own platform. Like are they talking each other? Like on the on context of that privacy, I was asking like
so that's why they were able to create that, because Reddit was open source.
Yeah.
They have just consumed some data and creating. But is it all? No. Humans have more than that. Do you go and ask your agent what is your son name? Will it be able to tell? Unless you provide that information. So even Molt book was created because Reddit was like either they signed something with Reddit, got that information, but while you are putting data on Reddit, you made that agreement that my data is public now, at least for Reddit.
but some user like while chatting like this let's suppose to the chat GPT, like it's friendly the chatbot everyone use. So like some of like not all but some they have some they just share all data, like they just tag talks like give some all information about themselves. So is there is like any agentic form like we can.
So it all needs to be controlled via this system. This is where you actually put guardrails. This is where you observe that if they are consuming my information, stop it straight away. So all of this is there because in observability there is something called tracing which you have. So observability has multiple things: monitoring, tracing, multiple things. But tracing is where you actually trace what your agent is using. You'll get so in tomorrow there is an exam which some of the students are going to have get, where they're getting like 5-page traces, and if you really see, each trace has very minute detail: what message got passed, what tool was used. No one go into that level. The problem is, like, as a developer also, when you are doing, how many of you have opened that trace and saw that, okay, what my agent is going through? You just wrote a code and then said it's working. The problem is you need to go download the JSON file. It's a JSON file. It's very difficult to read. Means it requires some patience, but no one is going to give, like, currently in all of you as a student also, you tell me how many patience you have. You don't have patience, right? You just run something quickly and get to result. That is the mindset you have. Because of that, all of this problem is coming. But if you are can you trace it? Yes, you can trace it. You can trace it using observability tools. There are ways to trace it, but that needs to be done. Means someone has to go and see those traces.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, I think we will. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that fascinating look into the future of AI architecture. Your insights on agentic ecosystems have certainly provided us with a new roadmap for innovating. I now invite Dr. Kishore from the Department of Computing Technologies to felicitate our guest with a token of appreciation on behalf of the department. We shall now adjourn for a brief recess for refreshments. I request all participants to kindly reassemble in this hall by 11:35 a.m. sharp so that we may continue our proceedings as scheduled. I repeat, we will now take a brief recess for refreshments. I request all participants and attendees to kindly reassemble by 11:35 a.m. sharp so that we may continue with our proceedings as scheduled. I request all participants to kindly scan the QR code displayed on the screen and share your valuable feedback. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you found the recess refreshing as we prepare for the concluding sessions of our workshop. We have now arrived at our final technical talk, a moment that brings together the overachieving themes of these past 2 days. It is a distinct privilege to host our final speaker, Dr. S. Venkatraman, a senior consultant in education and culture at UNESCO. Sir is a distinguished figure in international policy and education, having served as a featured expert at major relation platforms, including the New Indian Education Summit. With his extensive experience in fostering global educational and cultural frameworks, he is uniquely positioned to discuss how international standards and local governance must evolve alongside artificial intelligence. Today, he will be addressing the broad and critical theme governance and AI. Sir, we are truly honored to have your expertise to conclude our technical deliberations. I invite you to share your insights with our gathering.
How do I can just push this one, is it? Yeah. And this, yeah, you cannot. I can do this, no? Okay. Very good afternoon to you all. And let me at the outset thank SRM for inviting me to share a few things about the world of ethics with regard to AI. And I'm not a computer scientist. I'm basically a social scientist and an economist, but I work for a UN agency that works primarily as, I don't know how many of you know that UNESCO is the lead agency of UN, working in the field of education, culture, science and technology and communication. And UNESCO as an organization is basically works at the global level. We work with policymakers. We set global standards, issues related to you know frameworks and standards that, and we try to influence policymakers. I work a lot in the field within education and in the area of education in emergencies. So I work a lot in conflict, post-conflict countries, and it makes a lot of sense when we talk about AI, because quite often our discussions of AI is highly urban centric. We sort of assume that this is what everyone share, but I look at this in a very different way, because we are talking about literally millions of children, youth who don't even have access to internet or even computers. But AI is kind of making some sort of having an effect on their lives, knowingly or unknowingly. So it brings us to the topic of this session. I'll try. So already you would have people would have spoken about how AI has been moving rapidly from the labs where everything started, and now it's getting into the public domain. And we are now talking about how AI is helping us with regard to issues of welfare, or also about at the individual level, and also its role in the field of education, health, and also areas such as surveillance. It also has been acknowledged for its benefits, also has been criticized for its certain dangerous trends that AI can also be misused. One of the classic example is in the area of policing and surveillance. and lot has been written. Sociologists working in this area are writing about how AI can also be misused if you're not being very careful. At the same time, it also has its own merits, so that's something. And it's one of the major thing is it is telling us how we are. It is reshaping the way we make decisions, not only just you and me, but at the sort of political level and also at the policy level. So all these changes is very important when we ask certain fundamental questions. These are some of the fundamental questions that we need to know if we want to understand AI's role. One of the first questions that we need to ask ourselves is how can we ensure AI benefits humanity equitably? Because we live in a highly inequitable society with a lot of issues related to highly divisive society. So how do we ensure that it benefits humanity equitably without violating human rights or deepening social divides? Is it, can it do? Do we have evidence? Or what is the things that we need to make sure that it doesn't do? One of the, so there has been some sociologists doing some research, and one of the early, back in 2 3 years ago also, there was one study looking at the American scenario where uh, the policing in America, who have been influenced by the sort of AI technology, it kind of tries to uh, inform the decision making on who is likely to commit a crime, and it kind of reduces that to a certain race or certain color or certain gender, because it is taking data on past records, and then it formulates a certain sort of understanding and a kind of analysis to say, okay, the likelihood of people going to commit will be belonging to certain race or certain gender. So that is where the problem starts, and the so it becomes very important that AI, to ensure that AI doesn't violate such human rights, or and also the other one is how do we govern AI so that it uplifts society. So we have to ensure that can AI help us ensure that individuals, I mean people's dignity is protected, and equity is kind of maintained, and sort of justice is also kind of addressed, rather than harming and the vulnerable and entrenching bias. That is, so the harm that AI can do has to be taken into consideration. There's lot discussions that's happening. We don't have a clear cut answer, but evidence is mounting about the kind of harm that AI can do. Already, we are seeing issues of people's privacy is being threatened. Uh, your identity is being taken over. So what is the way? How do we ensure that? And already we are having so much of digital scams that we are getting into. So as a result of all these issues, with the advent of AI's growth, UN and its agencies have been developing some frameworks for the ethical governance of AI, because AI cuts across borders, moves across beyond countries, so anything can be controlled from anywhere. So there need to be some kind of a standardization in which how do we ensure that AI is administered or AI is used in a much more ethical manner. So one of the first such standard that came out of this uh, initiative taken by the UN is the publication of the recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence in 2021. So it's the first kind of global standard on AI ethics, and it was adopted in 2021 during a general conference of 193 UNESCO member states. They basically endorsed it. What this framework really is all about is what I'm going to talk a little bit. But in a sense, this framework has certain core themes that it's addressing, which is very important when we talk about ethics. One of the thing is equity and inclusion. How inclusive is AI? Who are being excluded? And what can be done in order to avoid this? How do we ensure that AI can be useful in bridging digital divide? It is doing in some sense with advancement in voice recognition softwares and etc. There's been like increasing where people who even with basic literacy are able to access information using voice recognition technologies. Then how do we look at issues of right to education? Can AI help where people can access education better? Because as you know, access to education is one is the physical nature of accessing, that is going to a school or a college, but the second thing is access to knowledge, access to information, and whereby that helps me to build my skills, and how AI can help promoting this. So there have been some positive examples of AI doing that, and so that is something that it's worth looking at, and how it can help bridging the this digital divide as well as help with regard to accessing education. Another area is human rights. So this is one major concern when we work in AI. How do we ensure safety, security, individuals, protection of individuals' rights? Data governance is another area because AI means data and lots of data. So the question is, how reliable is this data? What sort of data is being given? And there's already a lot of research has been done. So one of the things that sociologists talk about is the people who are much of this AI is uh, in terms of training the sort of AI systems happens somewhere in Silicon Valley, for example. The person who sits there, who is training using some certain sets of data, how much he or she would know what's happening to a child in Syria, how much they know about what's happening with regard to youth in Yemen. If you do something on ChatGPT, because I work in these areas, it gives a biased view about Yemen, biased view about Syria, because it falls into the stereotypes that the Western media has already created. So you are already into that. It's training you to think that way, which is a very dangerous thing. And the data. When you're asking certain data, it is one, it's giving an old, that's okay, very outdated data. But the second thing is it is giving a data that doesn't exist with the concerned ministry, and it doesn't tell you from where it is taken, and which is where the problem lies. How do you know that this is what it is giving you some data about a certain country, especially like a conflict country? And how do you know that this data is relevant and reliable? And similarly, the kind of data that is used to train these systems is where the problem is. You would have heard about Karen Ho's book on Empire of the AI. So she talks about that. Noel Harari is talking about it. He's raising this concern. So all these critiques are already raising this concern. So this is something we have to think about. And the other one is AI policy. To what extent governments are prepared, are coming up with policies and standards, and how that can be kind of globally looked at in terms of how these policies are implemented. Are these policies are considering all these factors that I've been talking about? Is it sensitive enough to these things, or is it only purely from an economic business perspective? So these are the things to keep in mind. So, in a sense, ethics is very critical in whatever we are doing with regard to AI. So ethical risks of AI are systemic. So that is something that is already there within the certain ingrained political structures and decision making models. So it is not something that just happens just because AI is something new, but it's there already. Before AI also, certain things are already built into a certain political structure. So AI is not something that's new and that's affecting, but it's already there. So bias, opacity, and sort of exclusion do not arise because AI fails. So it's not about when it's not addressing that we say that, oh, no, no, AI is not trained to do that. They often arise because AI works exactly as designed. It's about how we are training it, the kind of information we are feeding it, the kind of contextual things that is given to that, the way it is trained to think. I recently was listening to one of these uh, experts who is working in AI and medical field. So he was telling that AI is only giving us an advice based on whatever we know about medical science. But we don't know that AI doesn't know what is not there. It is already, and whatever that has been analyzed, whatever that is existing is what on based on that it's giving you an advice. But when we deal with human behavior and human emotions and things, you have to be careful. So this is something that is one of the cautions they are telling. So AI works as certain way it is designed, but with unequal social and data context. This is something that you need to be aware of. I'm stressing on this because I know that this conference is based on a project, and you're going to start data collection. Field work has to be done. I think there are about field researchers are here for this project. They are there. So you are going to deal with people. You're going to collect information. So you need to be aware of, because studying individual about their awareness about all these things is a huge sociological challenge. Usage of technology is easy to collect, but my views, my awareness about many of them, they don't even know that there are issues of rights, there are issues of ethics, there are issues of governance. So how am I going to respond to you? How do you collect this data? So it becomes a very important methodological question. So that's why I'm raising this social, political, cultural side of the story of AI, so that when you are actually have to conduct a study, you take that all into account when it comes to collecting information from people. The kind of methods and methodology I need to employ to get this information. So this is something that will be discussed probably later. So when algorithms decide eligibility, risk, or priority, ethical issues becomes questions of justice, trust, and legitimacy. So that's why AI ethics has moved from philosophy into core of public policy and governance. So it is not only about a scientific breakthrough, a technological breakthrough, on there is a need for the role of technology to provide this kind of next step of a human development. It's very important about who is controlling it, how it's been manipulated, how it's been regulated. So all these becomes very important that we need to understand. The UN system itself is also getting interested in this because, as you know, UN as a body has various types of organizations. Some of them are basically working at the policy level. Some are field-based organizations. Some are mere funds. They just looking at specific focus issues. But some UN organizations have started working on the issues of AI governance. One is UNESCO, another is ITU. ITU is International Telecommunication Union based in Geneva. They work a lot in the area of IT and so ICT and telecommunication. ILO works a lot in the area of labor and in terms of skills and work and how much, because today we are all concerned about the world of work in future. So ILO comes up with standards in terms of how do we build the skilled population for future. At the same time, to what extent AI can contribute and what are the precautions that we need to take. OECD and World Bank are funding research projects to find out the impact of AI on different sections of the society. Together, all these institutions shape what we call the global AI norms. So they're all looking at how do we come up with certain standards that various governments can follow. But these are all not binding laws, but lot can be achieved through policy guidance. So which is the major thing. How do we work with policymakers and influence the decision with regard to AI in terms of how AI systems are used and what sort of practices can be brought into the country to streamline them, and also how do we set these standards and ensure that this is maintained properly. When it comes to UNESCO, as I said, it's a kind of uh, it's an organization that works a lot at the sort of policy level. So they work primarily in education, culture, and human development, and lot working with the global south. And UNESCO's concerns has been always working on issues of inclusive aspects, in equality, and also looking at the diversity. So we work a lot in areas of how do we address inequality, areas of cultural diversity, and also working with different population sizes. And also, so when it comes to India, these are all uh, kind of issues that is already prevalent in our society. So it becomes very important that UNESCO started to sort of UNESCO's frameworks will be of relevance a country like India. This 2021 recommendation on AI ethics, it's one of the first of its kind, as I mentioned. It's more like a guide that is about to basically to shape how AI policies can be designed at the national level, how the concerned laws can be set, and also how certain uh, implementation practices can be brought into at the sort of country level. This particular document, this recommendation, is has both certain policy level guidances and also certain suggestions for how it can be implemented. And at its core, it's really all about, it's a kind of a rights based approach. So it looks at human rights and human dignity as its core values, and it says how do we uh, implement AI systems within the country, keeping in mind and not violating anything related to rights and human dignity. So, in order to do that, this recommendation has been designed on four foundational values on which it suggests that AI should be developed. One of the core value is human rights and human dignity. So I've already mentioned about this. We really have to make sure that we need to not only sort of respect human value, but also we need to ensure that human rights are are addressed, and also individuals' space, individual IDs, identities are protected, and also ensuring that the individual's dignity is maintained, communities, their own identity is also addressed. So rights is a very important thing. At the same time, the second value is about environment and ecosystem. And so anything that we do or when we work with AI is to ensure that it also benefits the planet. And in this context, I think you must be aware that AI is directly linked with energy. Lots and lots of water is being spent when we are using ChatGPT and everything. And already it is sucking out the water resources in Latin American countries, African countries, especially, I think if I'm right, in Colombia, it's a concern. So we don't realize that how much it is actually affecting the environment, natural resources. So this is something we have to be of concern. And then other one is, as I said, this issue of inclusivity, diversity, and equity, and how inclusive it is, whether it is for everyone, whether they have access to digital technologies or not, but how much it can actually uh, influence and also sort of help people who are otherwise may fall outside the sort of sphere of digital technologies. So, to what extent AI is promoting equity? The fourth one is very important, which is also a kind of SDG, Sustainable Development Goal agenda. It's to do with how can make sure that through in spite of advancement of AI, that we also look at how do we live peacefully in a just and interconnected societies. So, can AI contribute to peace? Is a big question. Can it contribute to justice? Can it link communities? And also, can it align with all the national democratic values that is already there? So, it is a big question that many researchers have a uh, sort of opposing views, while uh, technocentric people will have a different take, while the social scientists will have a different take on it. So I recently saw an interview with the head of the NVDAA, and he was telling how AI, he was trying to justify that AI will not take away the jobs, instead, it will create jobs. And he gave an interesting example. He said, you take the role of radiologists and doctors. If AI can read all your test results so that it will help you to spend more time taking care of patients because it is freeing up your time analyzing results. I was just thinking in India, if that is a scenario, they will look at adding more. How can I get more patients? So, which means it's a kind of a business thing. It's not about real social care. So AI can also be misused in this scenario, but maybe it happens in the Western society that they will have more time to spend. The nurses and the radiologists will have more time to spend with the patients. But here, just imagine if someone is going to give me the results. Okay, now I have more time. I'll take more patients. More patients can get admitted and becomes a better business model for me. So that's the other side. So this is something we have to be. Is there some kind of system or some kind of policy in place that will prevent such kind of things happening? So that is the question that we are concerned. And there are 10 principles on which this, which are grounded in human rights. That is on which uh, this framework has been developed. I'll briefly, it's already here. I've already spoken about few of them. One is to ensure that AI doesn't harm anyone. We basically have to protect individuals' identity, communities, ensure that their harmony is maintained. Safety and security is of major concern. How can we mitigate these risks? Then how do we ensure that fairness and non-discrimination is maintained? Because AI can lead to certain bias in our approach to doing things. So, and also there could be a scenario of people who can be excluded from these benefits of digital technology. So that has to be maintained. How do we ensure that human and environmental impacts through the AI can be addressed and ensure that there is progress and we create sustainable futures for human societies? Privacy and data protection, I've already mentioned about it. How do we ensure individuals' personal data is sort of protected? But we are getting all sorts of reports about, even if you switch off your phone, one can still track you, one can still listen to you. So that's the kind of entering into your privacy. And there are already countries like China. I hear that they, wherever in public spots, individuals' face are being read, and they track the behavior of what you do and where do you do. It's a kind of policy. It's a kind of surveillance. I want to know what is it exactly you're doing outside your own home environments. So that's already there. So sociologists are very interested to know what happens, how this can lead to certain other things which can be more dangerous. So because we are already living in a highly polarized world, highly opinionated. So already on top of that, imagine this is going to happen. So what's the thing? So and then what is our responsibility in this? And how do we ensure that people really know about what AI is? Even here in our society, although we are talking in a place like SRM, if you just walk down and talk to anyone, maybe in the canteen or in the security guy, he or she may not know. They are using technology without knowing that whatever they are doing, someone else, that data is going somewhere else. Someone can actually watch what you are doing, and they don't know anything about that. And that's why AI literacy becomes very important. AI literacy is not only to be taught in the schools and colleges. AI literacy has to be given to everyone, every citizen. And that is a policy decision. We don't have that yet in India. We have a so called policy, but it's not yet implemented. So, AI literacy is very important, public awareness about the do's and don'ts. And also, that leads to how well the whole governance structure moves on, how it adapts to this growing uh, need and of integrating AI in a very positive manner and in a sustainable manner. So there are 11 policy areas that this recommendation is talking about, and I'm not going to go into great things. I've already mentioned, so it will be like repeating. Just to tell you that these are the areas it is suggesting that national AI policies takes cognizance of these areas. One is the ethical impact assessment, ethical governance and stewardship, data policy. I've already mentioned about it's very important that uh, what kind of data that is being produced is of concern, and so we have to be very careful. Development and international cooperation, because AI is now not restricted to a country, it moves across borders. So how do we work with other countries to ensure that we maintain certain standards? Environments and ecosystems, I've already mentioned about that. Issues of gender, culture. Culture is very interesting. This is something I think AI has a tremendous positive role also, because in terms of safeguarding our heritage, maintenance and creating awareness and ensuring that heritage structures are maintained, and also traditional knowledge systems and cultural practices, AI has a very good role, and it can be very very positive. And already its role has been acknowledged in many countries. So there's education research, of course, it's very important. It's not only about introducing AI subjects in curriculum, it's also about, as I said, introducing AI literacy within, so that every common, every citizen is aware of it. And also research. So research not only on the technology side of AI, but also the application side. Recently, the founder of NVDA, he basically said, to understand AI is like a five-layer cake. So the bottommost is energy, then move to the chips, may to the AI tools. The final one is application. So we are more concerned. That is where we are more concerned, because how, once it comes to that level of this AI applications, we want to know how it is utilized, whether in the sort of financial business side or healthcare or anything. And that's where the role of researchers come. As a researcher, we want to know how effective it is, what are the positives, where the challenges are. And research there is not much research, especially from an Indian context. I think this proposed research, I hope it will add a new dimension also, because it's very important. We are trying to find out from communities, and especially people who are excluded. I think you're studying also tribal communities and Dalit communities and all, which is very important, because how much the role of AI is already prevalent there, or what are the challenges, or what is their view of this, the technology, and especially AI. So I work in some of these villages here. They have no idea. They know the word AI. For them, it is like seeing some reels in mobile phones and doing some gimmicks on mobile phones. That's what their AI knowledge is all about. So they have no idea about AI. It's another tool like your softwares. So that's what they are telling. So anyway, it'll be very good to find out. And the other is communication information, the media, how we are using it, and finally how it's impacting economy and labor, as well as the well-being and the health and well-being of individuals. I mean, again, AI has a tremendous role in it, and there's a lot of work has been done in that area, and it definitely has a very important contribution to the field of health. But the question is, how much it's contributing to rural health, how much it's contributing to addressing issues of health in remote places. Can AI make a difference? That's something what we need to know. See, ultimately, much of a discussion, much of research should not be stuck only with the urban centric approaches. We need to see how this is really influencing, how it's contributing, or is it affecting the people who normally are excluded socially and culturally. So that's very important. So takeaways, as I said, this framework looks at the principles, it looks at certain policy areas. So it basically covers everything, but it takes a fundamentally a sort of rights angle, sort of perspective, and it's a kind of a lays an important foundation to the way the AI can be developed and used in a very positive manner about addressing issues of rights and freedom, inclusive and peaceful society, addressing cultural diversity, and environmental sustainability. So I've already now there are some attempts have been done as one of the way of implementing this framework. One is this readiness assessment methodology called RAM, and this is basically we are trying to introduce it at country level to see how countries are implementing it at the policy level, and countries are asked to produce reports. And also another one is as one of the outcome of the report is to establishment of this global AI ethics and governance observatory, which has been set up in Slovenia, and with the help of Alan Turing Institute of UK. Again, these are all the byproducts of this AI ethics recommendation. And also there's a lot of UNESCO's help with working with governments to building their capacity, mainly focusing on civil servants, because we are talking about influencing policymakers. So which means civil servants become very important key people who need to understand the language, who need to understand what it is all about. So a lot of capacity building is being done by UNESCO, and also there is within education. UNESCO also has global frameworks on AI in education, and it very much goes in the lines of what I've just said on the sort of general ethics recommendation. But specifically in 2019, there was international conference in Beijing, which resulted in what is now known as the Beijing Consensus on Artificial Intelligence in Education. So it looks at the role of AI, how AI can be introduced, how AI can be better used for addressing issues related to education, with regards to educational quality, educational outcomes. How do we develop curricula? How do we develop specifically guidelines for teaching community, and also in terms of teaching learning practices. So all these things, and in fact, there have been two documents that UNESCO produced. One is they are known as the AI competency frameworks, both for teachers and students. So what level of competency is expected at for students at what level, and how teacher training has to be influenced in terms of them teaching AI or using AI when they teach subjects. So these are all standards that's been created for the within the education. And when it comes to India, as I've already said, we live in a highly pluralistic, diverse society, and therefore our access to technology in digital spaces is very uneven. So anything, so when we talk about anything to do with whether it's trust or accountability and all, it's going to be very, very uneven. So there is a tremendous need for research to focus on this. This proposed project is a longitudinal study. They proposed it for 5 years. So it becomes very important that we capture these issues of how issues of trust and accountability and all are shaped by the changes that happen in policy, and also changes that happens in the way things are implemented and sort of developed and introduced in various initiatives, and what is the resultant experience of citizens who are either directly or indirectly benefiting or affected. And anything that such longitudinal studies, the advantage is it can capture these changes, it can capture these trends, and that becomes very important for any evidence-based governance, and it can be a very important contribution to any policy level decisions. So there are challenges remaining despite all the gains we've had. As I said, still AI is, this has been already discussed by many social scientists about how AI is concentrated with certain few private corporations. There are no global binding norms or laws where for regulation and use of AI. Digital divides persist. There is very uneven access. At the same time, there is a rapid technological change that becomes very difficult to keep pace with, and also the changing dimensions in terms of the usability, in terms of what it can address, and already we are now talking about this what's that chat notebook that's coming, where AI agents are talking among themselves. So where human beings are only passive observers, and it is asking questions: can we trust human beings? So that's very interesting. Instead of us asking, it's now asking among themselves, can we trust these human beings? I believe they're asking the question, can we trust AI agents? So it's creating its own dialogue. It is creating its own kind of intelligent way of trying to address some of the pressing questions of all these social issues. So we don't know where this is all going to lead to. So the best way is for us as human beings is to look into what's been the present impact of all these changes, or the way the AI is permeating into a society, and what is it we need to learn, and these cautionary things that we need to take into account. But in order to make it standardized, it can happen only when it's properly regulated and also addressed at the policy level. Without that, things can go out of control. So that's very important. Of course, it requires constant vigilance, not only just introducing policies and regulations. We need constant monitoring on the impact of technology and this how AI uh, is actually playing a role in terms of human development. So there is a need for constant monitoring. For academics and students, uh, all the recommendations that UNESCO has come up with, the frameworks, basically it's based on the various research that's been conducted by various academic institutions globally and various experts in the field who have been discussing this. So, in a sense, AI research has to be interdisciplinary. It cannot look at one perspective. It has to come from a multidisciplinary perspective, because the questions we ask cuts across various dimensions: social, economic, technological, environmental, and other cross-cutting areas. So it has to be a interdisciplinary research. So AI, in a sense, is a new layer of social reality. It's no more a technology. So UNESCO framework reminds that ethics is not anti-innovation. Ethics means it's not putting control on something. It's about managing it, regulating it so that it is more beneficial than it does harm to individuals. Ethics is what makes innovations legitimate. So whatever that's going to happen, it's properly done. It takes into consideration of the various social dimensions, the various social realities, so that it doesn't miss out on anyone. And the future of e-governance really depends on how intelligent AI becomes and how accountable it remains. It's very important that we need to constantly keep track of this, because accountability is absolutely very important when we talk about the proper way of using AI in our society. So with that, I just conclude. There is any questions, I'll be happy to take. Thank you so much. Just one point I just want to mention. I just mentioned about research. I think probably you have started on that, but it'd be worth uh, spending some time training the field investigators, because many of them may be from uh, computer science background, but the work, especially we are looking at governance and ethics, it's a more a sociological area, because working with communities. So anyone from with a computer science background, the training of how they go about doing the field research is going to be very, very critical, because this data you collect is a very different to the data that you are used to as a computer scientist. So, and it's a skill, but it's not only a skill, it's also about your, because a lot will depend on, it's what we call as qualitative data. Any quantitative data is okay. I can take a survey questionnaire, ask you yes, no, fill out the things. When it comes to qualitative information, it requires a lot of orientation of these individuals towards those issues that we are talking about, and that will help improve the quality of the data that you're going to collect for this research. So that's my sincere request. Thank you. Yes, please. Yes, I think I can hear you. If you can. Yeah. Yes, very very pertinent question and very important question, which I thought of bringing back, but I thought I'll be moving into another area outside my topic. See, before I answer that question, you said, okay, why not we give better data sets, better things that captures the reality. But unfortunately, if you look at the data that's available, information that's available globally on certain issues like that, that is where the problem is. When it comes to what is out there, let's say, for example, we take education. When you go to, like, even whether it's India or, okay, let's take India itself. This is a good example. Someone was asking earlier also to me, how are our children doing well in comparison to other countries? How much we know? We know very little. Why? Because our data is primarily based on the tests, or what you call exam results. But the true measure of learning is to measure the competencies of people who have gone through the education system. It's a kind of the various competencies and the skills that they have acquired. And globally, there are methodologies to assess the learning competency. In India, we have two sources for that. The first one is done by the government called the NAS, National Assessment Scheme, which has a faulty methodology. The design of how the cognitive testing is done is questionable. To that extent, some of the states that participate in NAS, they run special coaching classes to attempt. So where is the testing? The next one is reliable, but it's limited, called the ACER, which tests students' capacity. They use grade 2 mathematics and language, and they test higher grades to see how much they are able to, whether they have that grade 2 capacity, which is also has yielded shocking results, which government refused to accept. Now, we don't know anything else. There are global assessments like PISA, TIMSS, and PEARLS. India doesn't participate. So, in a sense, we don't know anything. Now, let's imagine what data you're going to give to for training the AI on learning outcomes of Indian students. You will be giving NAS results, which is already faulty. NAS is already biased. Or you're going to give your typical exam results. Let's take our results. We get what? Our students in 10th and 12th, we get 100% in English. So you mean to say that is the reality? No. That's one thing. Second thing is the nature of data that's coming in. How disaggregated this data is. Quite often, we don't know about certain remote pockets. In many countries, India, okay, India is also there, but in many countries, we don't have data on, for example, refugees. There are countries, they don't collect data on migrant laborers, migrant workers. There's no data. So if you want to provide education to migrant children, you don't know anything. So what data are you going to give to that to train the AI? It's going to be already cooked up information or very partial information. But it's not just the data that's going in. Along with that, it goes with certain reports, official reports, which may portray a different picture, and that's where the problem lies. And also the media reports. Quite often, ChatGPT picks from certain Western media, and that's where this problem comes. See, I work, for example, in Yemen and Syria. Quite often, people ask me about Syria, and all their questions are already influenced by the images created by the Western media in their mind. So how am I going to start answering them? Because they have not understood anything about Syria, but they already formed this opinion, this is how it is. Or Yemen is going to be like this. I always tell them, for example, if you say Yemen is a violent society, everything is terrorist and all, I used to ask one question. Have you come across any country where teachers, school teachers, are teaching kids without taking salary for more than 5 years? You show me one country. Yemen it's happening there. So isn't that wonderful? Can you do that in India? Nowhere else. So what about that's for me is great humanity. They are teaching why? Because they want their children to continue learning despite not getting salaries. So this we don't know. ChatGPT will not give you this information. It's going to tell it's a very violent society. So what I'm trying to answer is yes, but the general data reality outside is what of concern. That has to be improved. So the data governance and data issues on those topics has to be first sorted out. Then only that can come here. Second thing is also there are partial selection and use of this data. Some good data is available, but it's not taken in because who is governing it and where it's governed. So that's why I use the Silicon Valley. It already has a certain biased view of the world. So it's not going to go into greater details to understand a certain country in West Africa before I start. I already formed a stereotype. Even in India, we have stereotypes of many countries. It's a basic human nature, right? So with that stereotype, I'm going to train an agent, AI agent. Just imagine the result. Yes, please.
Hello, sir. My name is Rishi, and I did my master's in sociology with specialization in politics of human rights from London School of Economics. So I had two specific questions. Like your talk was really insightful, but I had two really quick questions. Firstly, that now what we are seeing with most AIs is a rat race
Yeah.
between national AIs, like those who are backed by state governments or state funded AIs, or the Silicon Valley or the corporate AIs. Now, in one sense, the data goes to the Silicon Valley, our data is there for profit and everything. But on the other hand, with the state versions of it, what are the risks you assess on both these kind of models that we see happening with the rise of authoritarianism, be it in Africa or what we see with US?
Yeah.
Because state isn't any better for
Yeah.
a lot of us. And the second question is that when we were studying human rights, there were a lot of recommendations and declarations and articles. However, the question is who gets the human rights, or we were even told to ask who is even a human. Right? Some of us are not lesser humans than
Yeah,
others
yeah.
in certain contexts and others. So in and what we have seen in Gaza and everywhere else, that's very so with guidelines and all. Do you don't you think that's a redundant, like, because you come from policy, redundant exercise, because none of the governments actually enforce anything? It's like we are just producing bunch heaps of literature which no one reads and actually doesn't
Yeah.
materialize into anything. So how do you see that? Because as someone interested in academia as well as looking at the policies, I'm conflicted at what research can do and what are the limitations, and how do you see it being working in that?
Yeah, I mean, again, very pertinent question. This is again, this is the reality in which many of us are working. Not all international uh, policies or international frameworks and standards are, I mean, readily accepted. So it's a kind of it takes its own course of time. A lot of advocacy, a lot of discussions, and everything has to happen in order to for countries to really think in those lines. The second thing is sometimes evidence helps to push your things when you're working with governments. Again, things can go very slow, but it if you take a 30-year gap period or a 50-year period, you see small changes. It's only small battles they're trying to win. It becomes very difficult. Like for example, certain political structures, when they are in place, they are kind of resistant to certain things. Sometimes it when that thing changes, certain things can happen. Otherwise, it never happens. So the role of any of these international organizations or academia is it's about continuing your sort of advocacy. That's why you need to partner with civil society, and also you need to have bring in sort of media organizations. Again, we are talking about responsible media to project and promote and push these things. There are success stories also in this. It's not completely gloomy. It's not like everything is gone. I always give the example that in 2000, no, in 1990, when the first educational conference took place in Jomtien, that was the first time they took stock of where education, uh, the status of education globally, and there were shocking results came. Like girls' education, in many countries, the policies doesn't go beyond primary education. That was the reality. Okay, then 10 years later in 2000, there was a second global conference that took place in Dakar, Senegal. Now, that 10-year gap, lot of work was went in. Then again in 2000, we saw things have improved, like percentage of countries bringing like issues of girls' education into policy improved. But problems remained, especially with early childhood and sort of youth literacy. Then 2015, when the SDGs were formed, things started improving. Now we know now almost all many countries, girls' education has become prioritized and things. But higher education remained a gap. But new problems started coming in. Like our awareness was raised for some reason. So new issues were generated thanks to the civil society and the research that's taking place. We are now talking about gender-based violence. So this was a new area that people dealing with gender, which was not there earlier. So that had to be addressed. And then issues of conflict, related issues. So the problems of refugees and issues of women within the refugee context. All these started coming. So what I'm trying to say is, as you are working on one and it takes time, new issues keep cropping up. So you have to deal with this also. So AI is like that. It's a new area. So which means you need research, you need the grassroots, people, organizations who are working with the sort of real situation, and combined with other things. So these standards and policies are, they most of them are non-binding, which means that can be implemented only through influencing at various levels. And evidence is one of the most important factors, research-based evidence, and that is the strongest way of trying to push this. But it's not going to happen overnight. So it is a kind of a continuous process of trying to fight in all directions. But as I said, small victories are there. Somehow, if that happens, then that itself, it's a major thing. We have to make sure that the major harm is doesn't happen, and the world is takes into all these kind of issues of uh, diversity on one side, and also this inequality. These are fundamental things. This is what we need to address. As you said, rights. We keep talking about rights, our notions of right, but these global notions of rights gets translated into a national version of rights, which is highly politically driven. So how do you counter that? It's one side is the academia, it's pushing through research. Other side is these grassroots organizations and other activists and people working. They also keep pushing. So, and at some point in time, when there is going to be some kind of a coordinated, concerted effort, there's going to be pressure for small changes do happen here and there, and that we are seeing it, and that hopefully But now we are talking about new kinds of issues of rights with now AI. So we need to deal with it. What are we talking about? So already now this is going to be a much more a bigger battle because we are dealing with something that we don't see. So okay. So you have something?
Good morning, sir. I am Vetri Chelonar from VIT University, Velo. I'm a research scholar working in AI and elections, especially in election campaign and misinformation. And my question is from Indian context, governance is not that much familiar to some group of peoples or communities. Policies, laws are created but not reached. Even in many places, they are not having access to electricity and simple life. Yeah, my question is in this context, what AI will change or what AI will contribute to the society? Even they are not having access to the digital. Why
That's
AI
what
is need?
that's what I'm saying. Even indirectly, AI can contribute, but it's a question is how much I am aware of what I'm using. For example, I have a mobile phone. Today, I may not know how to. I actually know a person who can't read or write, but is working. So If he wants to send a message, he uses that voice thing. He will say what he wants to. That it types, and the message is sent. If someone is sending something he can't read, so he uses the thing, and it translates and tells in sort of in audio version as to what the message is. I'm able to communicate, so that's fine. But the issue is there are hidden things that he or she must be aware of, on what I can use, what I cannot use, what I can trust, what I cannot trust. Because now today, in the through those technology, so many so-called facts are being sent, but they are not facts. Or information is sent may not be true. It's constructed. It's not the real thing. So how do I know which is fake and which is real? We're talking about election. Election means now a lot of campaigns will be happening. People will claim I've done this, I'm going to do this. They lot of data is quoted. How do you know that this is the data? That data source. See, we have a very bad practice in media and in everything. We quote data, we quote numbers without telling from where it came and who actually collected the source of this origin of this data. So without that, we keep creating numbers. I have achieved 90%. 90% means from where? And people think, oh, 90%, that means it's successful. So we keep building on this half truths or lies, and then that becomes a truth, and people buy that. So the background of this has to be not only AI literacy, in general about media literacy. We talk about media literacy, which is a much older concept. We still don't have media literacy. In fact, it's getting worse now because we have paid media, political, like party related media, and that is promoted as truth, and people think that's the thing. So there is no, where do you draw the line of being objective way of looking at things than being subjective? So that itself is there. Media literacy is not there, leave alone AI literacy. So unless these things are addressed, it's be very difficult for us to know the true sense. But there is, as I said, I gave you the example of the benefit of AI also. It works and it helps in certain things, from our navigation systems and things like that. Everything, there is a lot of things, but there is also a darker side, and that is something we are not aware of. So that is something has to be introduced only, but it's not just a policy issue. It's about bringing it into various sections of the society, creating this necessary awareness. That's a responsibility by the governance structures and also media. But we are not discussing much about that. We are only using it as more on the tools side. The tools, and of course, we are talking about cyber security and this and that, but it's all more incident driven. It's all incident driven. How to be careful about not open a banking app. They're all related to one specific, but not at the certain conceptual level about cyber safety and cyber security. So that awareness is missing even among people who are educated. So that has to change. How do we do it? That's the thing, and that's the responsibility of, in a sense, everyone. I would say, not only governments. Okay, so I think we're done.
Thank you, sir, for that enlightening session on the global landscape of AI and governance. I now invite Dr. M. Suganya to felicitate our guest with a token of appreciation on behalf of the department. I request all participants to kindly scan the QR code displayed on the screen to share your valuable feedback for this final technical session. With the conclusion of our final technical session, the external component of this national workshop has now come to an end. We sincerely thank all our participants, students, research scholars, and industry professionals for your active engagement and contributions over the past 2 days. Regarding your certification, please note that for all participants who have registered and successfully submitted the feedback form, your participation certificates will be sent to your registered email addresses. I repeat, for all participants who have registered and successfully completed the feedback forms, your participation certificates will be sent to your registered email addresses. We thank you once again for being part of this journey towards ethical AI governance. We now adjourn for a lunch break. I request the project team and the designated members to reassemble at 2:30 p.m. in the Ramanujan Hall for the roundtable session to discuss the project way forward. This will be followed by the valedictory ceremony to officially conclude our 2-day national workshop. I wish you all a pleasant lunch.